There are times when clients will tell you that their life was turned upside down due to a specific event. The way they thought and felt about themselves, about others, about the world in general completely changed after this event. They will tell you that they know this event will not repeat again. Most people in their life don't even know the event happened, and the ones who know may have already forgotten about it. Take the example of a client who tells you that as a child, while I was in my school, once I defecated in my pants. All my classmates laughed at me. My teacher insulted me, and the maid who helped me clean up got angry at me. After this event, I wasn't the same. From someone who was very outgoing and talkative in the class, I became very withdrawn. Mostly stopped engaging with others, started having self-doubts. It was very difficult for me to trust people and make friends after this. And I'm still struggling with this today. This is a major source of problem in my relationships and career now. Rationally, I understand that the event is in the past, but still, I am affected by it. It is with clients like these that I would use the NLP Reimprinting process. This is a process that literally changes the manner in which the memory is stored in the client's mind. After the process, when the client tries to remember the event, it is very difficult for them to remember the exact event. In most cases, at least initially, the client may know what the event was, but when they try to recollect it, a different version of the event comes to their mind. The client in the coming days also notices how their beliefs, thoughts, feelings and behaviors are now being influenced by the new version of the event instead of the old one. Even as I describe this to you, I know it sounds so amazing. So before we go ahead and look at the step-by-step guide on how to use the reimprinting process with your clients, you know that a small action on your part can help others learn from this video, right? So before we begin this process, since we are changing how the memory is stored in the client's mind, it is important to check that the possibility of the event happening again is highly unlikely and that there is no one in their life who will bring up the event in conversations with them. Once we are certain of this, the first step is to ask the client to close their eyes and think about the specific event. Make sure that the client is disassociated while they are recollecting the memory. Once the client says that they have a clear recollection of the event, the next step is to ask them about the number of key people or groups of people that played an important role in the event. So for example, in the case I shared about, there are 4 key sets of people: classmates, the teacher, the client themselves and the maid. Next, ask the client to open their eyes, take a moment or two and then write on a paper, in the order of the importance of the role played, the people that the client identified in the last step. In our example, let's say the client says that the teacher played the most important role, followed by the client himself, then the maid, and finally the classmates. Next, ask the client to think about the most important person in the event, in our case the teacher, and make a note of all the skills that if this person had, he or she would have been able to handle the event more effectively, such that the overall experience for the client would have been positive. Next, ask the client to identify the skills for each of the other people, the skills with which each of these people could have transformed the event. Next, ask the client to select as many objects from around them as the number of people on the list and assign these objects to represent each person on the list. These objects could be anything: a pen, pencil, phone, and so on. Next, ask the client to place each object in front of them on a surface like a floor or a table, in a manner that the placement on the surface represents the relative physical location in the actual event. Once the client is able to place the objects, ask the client to look at the object and replay the entire event in front of them, imagining each object actually turning into the person that the object represents. Once the client can replay the event completely, ask them to assign all the skills they were listed in front of the most important person to that person, and then imagine how the event would have played out once this person had the required skill. The client will notice how the new event turns out better for them. Next, ask the client to take back the skills from the most important person so they are back to what they were earlier, and only give the skills of the second most important person to that person. Imagine how the event will turn out when this second most important person has the required skills. Repeat this process of imagining the event playing out differently with each person having the required skills, while the others are not having the same. Next, ask the client to imagine that all the people in the event have all the required skills, and then check how the event finally turns out. Once the client has been able to imagine the event playing out differently, with first each person having the skills one at a time, and then all having the required skills, ask the client which version of the event did they find the best. Whichever version of the event the client finds the best, ask them to replay that version in their mind once again, from the beginning to the end. Then ask them to imagine this version again 7 or 8 times. Each time, the speed at which they imagine the event becomes faster than the last time. So, the first time at normal speed, then twice the speed, then 4 times the speed, and so on. Next, ask the client to pick up each of the objects from the surface and put them back from where they were picked up at the start of the process. Ask the client to walk around a bit, talk about how they are feeling now, and maybe even about other unrelated things. The objective is to create a break state. After the break state, ask the client to close their eyes and try to go back to the original event. Ask them to try hard to remember the original event completely, and suggest that no matter how hard they try, they are not able to recollect the exact original event. It is the new version that keeps playing in their mind. Once the client confirms this, ask them to notice how it feels now. Next, do future pacing for the specific areas in the client's life where they will notice a major difference as a result of the transformation of this one specific event. This is an amazingly simple yet powerful process. It is also one of the processes where you are helping the client experience a deep hypnotic state with their eyes wide open. Just a note of caution. If in the beginning, when you ask the client to remember the event with their eyes closed, they start experiencing intense emotion, first help them release these emotions using some other process. I generally use the release metaphor process for the same, and then continue with the recollection of the event. As we reach the end of this video, if you have any questions about the process, do feel free to ask us in the comments, and we will address them in our Friday Q&A sessions on Facebook and YouTube. In case you are a practicing psychologist who would like to learn not just the NLP Reimprinting process, but a lot more under supervision and guidance, then do check out the Cognitive Hypnotic Psychotherapy Diploma. It is the most comprehensive course that you will come across with extensive support even after the course gets over.